On the heels of her father's funeral, 19-year-old Tracy was thrown out on the street without a dime by her stepmother. The young woman thought she was completely alone, but her loving father had foreseen how to provide for her future in such a situation. The grey winter sky weighed on her shoulders. Tracy stood by the freshly dug grave, not feeling the icy wind that cut to the bone. Beside her, with a black shawl covering half her face, was her stepmother, Miranda. The woman periodically dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, but Tracy saw not a single tear on her face. "We send on his final journey Arthur Brown, a loving father, a caring husband, a talented businessman." The priest's voice resonated, but Tracy barely heard it. Only one thought spun in her mind: her father was gone. This simple thought couldn't penetrate the consciousness of the 19-year-old. "Be strong, honey," Miranda whispered into her ear, giving her a slight hug. "Your father was a strong man. He wanted you to be strong too." Those words brought tears to Tracy's eyes. Yes, her father had always taught her to be strong. "Life isn't just about happiness, Tracy," he'd tell her, "but no matter what, you must never lose yourself." The funeral ended. Her father's business associates, neighbours and distant relatives all came up to Tracy to offer condolences. Many spoke of what a wonderful man Arthur had been, how much he loved his daughter, and how proud he was of her. Tracy nodded mechanically, not understanding how she would live now without his support and love. "Let's go home," Miranda said when everyone had dispersed. "We have a lot to talk about." The ride home was silent. Tracy looked out the car window at the snowy streets of her hometown, rushing by, and remembered how her father used to take her sledding in the park when she was a child. He was so happy about her success in school and at dance classes. And then, 3 years ago, Miranda came into their lives, a flashy, charismatic businesswoman her father met at a conference. Tracy sighed. She had never felt affection for her stepmother, but there had been no open hostility between them either. At least not until this day. As she entered the apartment, Tracy immediately sensed that something was wrong. In the hallway were 2 large bags and a worn suitcase. "What is this?" she asked, taking off her coat. Miranda walked into the living room, sat in an armchair, and for the first time all day, her face took on a serious expression. "Those are your things," she said. "I've packed everything up." "My things?" Tracy asked, not understanding. "Why?" "Because it's time for you to move out," Miranda replied, lighting a cigarette. "You're 19 now, a grown woman. It's time for you to start your independent life." Tracy froze, unable to believe what she was hearing. "What do you mean, move out? This is my apartment. It was mine and Dad's." "What was your dad's was your dad's," Miranda corrected her. "But now your dad is gone, and the apartment is mine. I have the documents to prove it. Your father transferred it to my name before he died." "That can't be," Tracy exclaimed, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Dad would never do something like that." "He did, and he will," Miranda cut her off, exhaling a puff of smoke. "And really, that's not the point. The point is, we've never liked each other. I tolerated you for Arthur. Now that he's gone, I don't have to keep up this charade." Tracy felt the ground disappear from under her feet. Was this really happening? On the day of her father's funeral, she was being kicked out of her own home. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. "That's your problem," Miranda shrugged. "You have friends at college, professors who like you. Ask to stay with someone for a while, then you'll find a job and rent a room. In short, you'll live like a normal person, not a princess who gets everything handed to her." "Give me at least a few days," Tracy pleaded. "I just buried my father." "And I just buried my husband," Miranda retorted. "I need to be alone to process my loss, so please pack your things and leave right now." "But not all my things are here." Tracy looked at the meagre bags. "Where's my laptop, my books, my photos?" "I only left the most necessary things," Miranda shrugged. "We'll talk about the rest later, when you're calmer and thinking clearly." "Clearly?" Tracy felt rage boiling inside her. Thinking clearly means throwing a person out on the street in 20-degree weather on the day of her father's funeral. Don't be so dramatic, Miranda frowned. It's only 5 degrees outside, and you're not a stray dog. You're a young, healthy girl who finally needs to grow up and learn to solve her problems on her own. At that moment, Tracy understood that arguing was useless. This woman had already made up her mind. With trembling hands, she began to put on her coat, which still hadn't dried from the cemetery. "Make sure you take your documents with you," Miranda called out as she walked away. "Passport, student ID. I put everything in the side pocket of the suitcase." Tracy nodded silently, took the bags and the suitcase and walked out, carefully closing the door behind her. Only when she reached the landing did she allow herself to let the tears fall. Going downstairs, Tracy stopped at the building's entrance. Where to go? Who to turn to? Her friends had gone home for the holidays, and she didn't have any close enough to go to with a suitcase. There were no close relatives left in the city, only distant family in other towns she hadn't even been in contact with. Wet snow fell on her face, mixing with her tears. Tracy began to walk down the street without knowing where she was going. Before her eyes was her father's kind face, with those radiant wrinkles around his eyes. How could he have left her in such a situation? Didn't he understand that Miranda was just waiting for the right moment to get rid of her? Memories washed over her like a wave. There she and her father were making pizza on weekends. He always cooked for her on Saturdays, even when he was very busy with work. There they were at the circus. She was 5 years old, clutching her dad's hand tightly, afraid of the clowns. High school graduation, her father proudly taking her picture in her prom dress. And then Miranda appeared. At first she was nice, giving Tracy gifts, taking an interest in her life. But after the wedding, everything changed. Miranda became cold, distant, and in the last year, when her father became seriously ill, she stopped pretending to hide her irritation. "Your daughter is just sitting in her room not doing anything around the house," could be heard from her parents' bedroom. "She's a woman now, Arthur. It's time she learned to be independent, and you're still coddling her like a child." Of course, her father defended her. He said Tracy studied well and helped out as much as she could, but his voice sounded weaker each time, and his arguments less convincing. The illness stole his strength, and Miranda took advantage of that. Tracy walked through the streets, stopping at times to relieve the weight of the suitcase. Her hands were freezing. Her gloves had been left in the pocket of a different coat. Her feet were wet. Her winter boots weren't among her essential things either. Night fell. Streetlights illuminated the snowy streets. A warm light could be seen in the windows of the houses. People were returning from work, hurrying to be with their families. "Dad, where are you?" Tracy thought, feeling her fingers going numb. "Why did you leave me alone? Why did you let that woman decide my fate? After all, I'm your daughter, your blood." But there was no answer, only the wind throwing sharp snowflakes at her. Tracy didn't realize when her feet took her to a small park near the university. She and her father used to walk there when he came to visit after her classes. The girl sat on a snow-covered bench regardless of the cold. Her strength was leaving her. "Tracy Brown?" a surprised female voice suddenly called out. She lifted her head. In front of her was Nancy Cooper, her senior literature professor. A woman in a warm coat and a furry hat looked at her with obvious concern. "What are you doing here all alone in this cold? And why do you have your things?" Nancy Cooper asked, alarmed. Tracy wanted to answer calmly, but instead she broke into a fresh round of sobs. The professor sat down next to her and put an arm around her shoulders. There, honey, calm down. Tell me what happened." Dad died," Tracy managed to say between sobs. "Oh my God," Nancy Cooper exclaimed. "Poor child. And where are you living now? Why are you on the street with your things?" Tracy briefly recounted what had happened, the funeral, the cruel decision of her stepmother, that she had nowhere to go. "How cruel," Nancy Cooper said, indignant. "To throw a child out on a day like this. No, this can't stand. You're coming with me right now. You'll live with me until we figure this situation out." "I don't want to inconvenience you," Tracy began to say, but the professor shook her head firmly. I don't want to hear another word. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. There's plenty of space. Besides, I've always had a soft spot for you. You were one of my favourite students, and I remember your father well. He always came to parent-teacher conferences, unlike many others. He was a decent man. Half an hour later, they entered Nancy's old but cosy apartment on the second floor of a 5-story brick building. Make yourself comfortable in the living room, the professor said, helping Tracy take off her coat. I'll put the kettle on now and get you some clean clothes. You need to warm up and rest. Tracy nodded gratefully. She felt physically and emotionally shattered. The last few weeks had been a real nightmare. Her father's illness was progressing rapidly. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed too late. She spent nights sitting by his bed, holding his hand, watching as the light in his eyes dimmed each day. And now, on top of it all, this betrayal by her stepmother. Have some tea, Nancy Cooper said, placing a cup with the steaming drink in front of her. And eat a sandwich. I'm sure you haven't eaten anything all day. Tracy nodded. After the funeral, there had been a memorial lunch, but she couldn't swallow a single bite. Nancy Cooper, thank you so much, Tracy said. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't run into you. Don't thank me, the woman smiled gently. A lot of things happen in life, and we have to support each other in difficult times. Eat something and then lie down. We'll think about what to do tomorrow. In the morning, Tracy woke up to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. For the first few seconds, she didn't know where she was, but then yesterday's events came rushing back. With effort, she forced herself to get up from the sofa. Good morning, Nancy Cooper greeted her. Did you sleep well? Thank you. Well enough, Tracy lied. In reality, she had barely closed her eyes, replaying what had happened and trying to understand what to do next. Breakfast is on the table, the professor said, and then we'll talk about your plans. During breakfast, Nancy Cooper delicately asked Tracy for more details about the situation. So your stepmother says your father transferred the apartment to her? Yes, Tracy nodded. But I don't believe Dad would have done something like that. He always said that no matter what, I would have a roof over my head. And what about his business? Nancy Cooper asked. If I remember correctly, your father had a company. Yes, a construction company, Tracy replied. Small but stable. Dad started from scratch 20 years ago. He was very proud of his work, but I don't know what will happen to it now. Miranda will probably take that too. And the will? Did your father not leave a will? I don't know, Tracy shrugged. No one has said anything to me about a will. Strange, Nancy Cooper frowned. Arthur Brown seemed like a very responsible man to me. It's hard to believe he wouldn't have provided for the future of his only daughter. Maybe he just didn't have time, Tracy said in a low voice. The disease progressed very quickly. The last few weeks he was almost always asleep because of the strong painkillers. They were finishing their coffee when the doorbell rang. Nancy Cooper went to open it and returned with an envelope in her hand. This is for you, she said, handing the letter to Tracy. The messenger said he looked for you at your old address, but the neighbours told him they saw you heading this way last night. Tracy took the envelope in surprise. It had her old address on it, and in the top corner was a stamp from a notary's office. A notary? She said aloud, surprised. But why? Open it and find out, Nancy Cooper smiled. With trembling hands, Tracy tore open the envelope. Inside was an official letter. Dear Tracy, we hereby notify you of the need to appear at the notary's office located at 24 Garden Street, Office 301, to review the will of your father, Arthur Brown, born in 1970. We ask you to attend on December 15th, 2023 at 2:00 p.m. sharp. Sincerely, Notary Jukes Jackson. A will? Tracy exclaimed. Dad did leave a will. See? Nancy Cooper nodded, satisfied. I told you your father wouldn't leave you without support. Today is the 15th, so you need to get ready. What if it says that everything really goes to Miranda? Tracy asked, worried. In that case, we'll look for other ways to solve the problem, Nancy Cooper replied firmly. But for some reason, I'm sure your father took care of you. Tracy arrived at the notary's office 15 minutes before the agreed-upon time. Her heart was pounding with excitement. What awaited her there? What final words had her father left her? In the waiting room, she was surprised to find her stepmother. Miranda was nervously smoking an e-cigarette, pacing back and forth in the small room. "Look who showed up," she said when she saw Tracy. "Did you find a place to spend the night?" "Yes, I did," Tracy replied sharply, not wanting to go into details. "And that's already a favour," Miranda laughed. "I was thinking of reporting you missing to the police." "How touching of you," Tracy couldn't help but say sarcastically, "especially after you threw me out on the street." "Don't be so dramatic," Miranda frowned. "You're a grown girl. You have to understand the realities of life. Everyone has their own path. Mine is to be the owner of the house I deserve, having supported your father during his illness. Yours is to start your independent life." Tracy didn't have time to respond. They were called into the notary's office. Lucas Jackson turned out to be a serious man in his 50s, with an attentive gaze and a well-kept beard. He greeted both women and gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said in a formal tone. "Today we have gathered for the reading of Arthur's will." The will was properly drafted and legalized 4 months ago on August 10th, 2023. Tracy noticed Miranda tense up. 4 months ago. That was before her father's illness worsened, when he was in full possession of his faculties and had a firm memory. "According to the will of the testator," the notary continued, unfolding the document, "his assets are distributed as follows. The apartment at 17 European Street, apartment 56, becomes the property of his wife, Miranda Brown." Miranda looked triumphantly at Tracy. Tracy felt something tighten inside her. "However," the notary continued, "the 3-bedroom apartment owned by the testator, located at 103 Victoria Avenue, apartment 42, becomes the property of his daughter, Tracy Brown." Tracy's mouth dropped open in surprise. What apartment was the notary talking about? Her father only had one apartment, the one they lived in. In addition, the notary turned the page. The majority stake, 51% of the construction company Brown Renovations, becomes the property of his daughter, Tracy Brown. The remaining 49% becomes the property of his wife, Miranda Brown. "What?" Miranda jumped up from her chair. "This is a mistake. Arthur never told me about a second apartment, and we had agreed that the business would be mine." "I assure you there is no mistake," the notary replied calmly. "All documents are in order. Arthur Brown acquired the second apartment approximately a year ago, and the majority stake has always belonged to him personally, which is confirmed by the founding documents." Tracy was stunned. She had an apartment and the majority stake in her father's business. It seemed unreal. "A personal letter for Tracy is attached to the will," the notary added, handing her another envelope. "Arthur Brown requested it be given to you after the official reading." Miranda shot Tracy a malicious look. "This is a forgery," she muttered under her breath. "I'm going to contest the will. Arthur couldn't have done this to me after everything I did for him." "That is your right," the notary replied, unperturbed. "But I must warn you that all documents are in perfect order. The will was drafted in the presence of witnesses, and the medical certificates confirm that Arthur Brown was in full possession of his mental faculties at the time of drafting." Miranda abruptly got up, grabbed her purse, and rushed out of the office, slamming the door shut. "Don't pay attention to her," the notary said softly to Tracy. "That reaction is common at will readings. People often make plans, and when they fall apart, they feel disappointment." Tracy nodded, still not believing what was happening. "Can I read my father's letter?" "Of course," the notary nodded. "You can do it here or take it with you, whatever you prefer." "I think I'll read it at home," Tracy decided. "Tell me, when can I see the apartment?" "Even today," the notary smiled. "Here are the keys and the documents. The apartment is completely in your name. All services are paid for 6 months. Arthur Brown was a very cautious man." As she left the notary's office, Tracy clutched the envelope with the letter and the bunch of keys to her chest. She felt as if her father was by her side again, as if he had hugged her and said, Everything will be okay, Tracy. I thought of everything. She decided to first go back to Nancy Cooper's to tell her what had happened and then go see the apartment. On the way, she couldn't resist and opened the envelope with her father's letter. My dearest Tracy, if you're reading these lines, it means I'm no longer with you. Forgive me for not being able to beat the illness and stay by your side longer. You were and still are the greatest joy and pride of my life. I suspected what could happen after I was gone. Miranda has changed in recent years, and those changes have not been for the better. She was a good wife in many ways, but I saw how she treated you and understood that as soon as I was gone, she would try to get rid of you. That's why, a year ago, I secretly bought an apartment for you and transferred the majority stake in the company to your name. Miranda didn't know. She thought the entire business would belong to her. I didn't want to create conflicts while I was alive, so I did everything through trusted people. The apartment is completely ready to live in. It has everything you need. In the bedroom, in the closet, behind the books, you'll find a safe. The code is your date of birth. Inside are all the important company documents and money for the first little while. There are trustworthy people at the company who will help you manage it. Pay special attention to Richard, my vice president. He's 58. He was always loyal to me and will help you. Don't let Miranda intimidate you. All the documents are legally impeccable, and she won't be able to contest the will, although she'll surely try. I believe in you, my daughter. You're strong and smart. You'll make it. Remember that I'm always with you, in your heart. With love, your dad. Tracy didn't realize when the tears began to roll down her cheeks. Her father had really foreseen everything. He protected her even after his death. It was so characteristic of him to always think several steps ahead. Nancy Cooper was happy to hear the news. I told you, she exclaimed, hugging Tracy. Your father wouldn't leave you without support. What a wise man to have foreseen everything. Yes, Tracy nodded, wiping away her tears. But Miranda said she would contest the will. Let her try, Nancy Cooper scoffed. If the notary says everything is in order, then it is. Now let's go see your new apartment. The apartment turned out to be spacious and bright, on the 10th floor of a new building with a view of the park. 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, 2 bathrooms. Everything was renovated in a modern style, with nice furniture and appliances. Oh my God, Tracy whispered, looking at her new possessions. It's a real fortune. Your father clearly wanted you to have everything you needed, Nancy Cooper observed, opening the kitchen cabinets with interest. Look, there's even tableware, and quite expensive at that. Tracy went to the bedroom and opened the closet. Behind a row of books, she found a built-in safe. She entered her date of birth and the door opened. Inside was a folder with documents and an envelope with cash. $500,000. Dad, she whispered, hugging the envelope. Thank you. The next day, Tracy decided to visit her father's company. She needed to know how things were at the firm. The Brown office was in a small 2-story building in a commercial area of the city. Tracy was nervous. She had never been interested in her father's business, thinking it was not her concern, but now she was the owner of the company. At the reception, she was greeted by a secretary, a young woman with a kind face. How can I help you? She asked. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm Arthur's daughter, the girl introduced herself. I need to speak with Richard. The secretary's eyes widened. Tracy, of course, please come in. Richard is inside. Allow me to express my condolences for the loss of your father. He was an exceptional man and leader. Thank you, Tracy nodded, moved by the sincerity in the young woman's voice. Her father's vice president turned out to be an older man with a greying beard and an attentive gaze. When he saw Tracy, he stood up from his desk. Hello, Tracy. We finally meet in person. Your father spoke about you often. Hello, Tracy said, shaking his hand. My father mentioned in his letter that you would help me with the company. With pleasure, Richard nodded. Please have a seat. We have a lot to talk about. For the next hour, the vice president brought Tracy up to speed on the business. The company was small but stable, dedicated to building affordable housing, and had a good reputation in the city. It had around 30 permanent employees and up to 100 subcontractors. In recent months, when your father was sick, things weren't going so well, Richard admitted. Miranda tried to intervene in the management, even though she had no authority to do so. She fired several valuable employees, which caused delays in the projects. We barely managed to keep the situation under control. And now? Tracy asked. She knows the majority stake passed to me? She does. The man nodded gravely. She came here right after the notaries, made a scene, and threatened to fire everyone as soon as she contested the will. We tried to explain that things don't work that way, but she wouldn't listen. Tracy sighed. It seemed life wouldn't be easy. What do you advise me to do? She asked. I don't know anything about the construction business. Maybe I should sell my share. Richard frowned. I don't advise you to make a decision so quickly. Your father built this company for 20 years. He poured his soul into it. He wanted the business to continue. Besides, the company generates a stable income. With it, you'll be financially protected. You can sell at any time, but you should first understand how things work. You're right, Tracy nodded. Thank you. I'm going to learn. At that moment, the office door burst open without a knock, and Miranda entered. Behind her was a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Ah, here's the heiress, her stepmother snarled, shooting Tracy a contemptuous look. Decided to play businesswoman, and yesterday she didn't even know the difference between debit and credit. Miranda, Richard said in a stern tone, in this office we knock before entering. Don't give me orders, the woman cut him off. I'm still a shareholder in the company. She gestured to her companion. Oscar Wright, my lawyer. We've come to inform you that I'm filing a lawsuit to contest Arthur's will. The lawyer took a folder with documents out of his briefcase. Until the court makes a decision, he said in an official tone, we demand to freeze all the company's assets and suspend any financial operations that require the signature of the majority stakeholder. What are you basing that on? Richard asked, surprised. The company can't stop its operations because of your lawsuit. On the fact that the will was made when Arthur Brown was under the effects of powerful painkillers, the lawyer replied. This affected his ability to evaluate the situation and make rational decisions. That's not true, Tracy intervened. The will was drafted 4 months ago when Dad wasn't taking those strong medications. He was fully conscious. That's what you think, Miranda smiled grimly. In reality, his treatment started earlier. He just hid the seriousness of his condition so as not to worry you. I have medical documents to prove it. Tracy paled. Did Miranda really find a way to contest her father's will? I demand that until the case is resolved, all company documents be sealed, Miranda continued, and that no financial operations be carried out without my consent. You have no right to that, Richard replied. Tracy is the legitimate owner of the majority stake, and only she can make those decisions. We'll see, Miranda snarled. Oscar, leave a copy of the lawsuit. We're leaving. There are still several instances to visit. When they left, Tracy slumped into the chair, feeling empty. What's going to happen now, Yes? She asked. Can she really take everything from me? I don't think so, Richard shook his head. But she can cause a lot of problems. We need a good lawyer. At that moment, someone knocked on the door, and the secretary entered. Richard, Charles Collins says it's urgent that he come in. The vice president nodded. A young man, about 30, tall, with an attentive gaze and a kind smile, entered. Hello, Richard, he said, and then saw Tracy. Excuse me, I didn't know you had visitors. Charles, this is Tracy, Arthur's daughter and the new owner of the majority stake, Richard introduced the young woman. Nice to meet you, Charles smiled, shaking Tracy's hand. I'm sorry for your loss. Arthur Brown was an exceptional man. Thank you, Tracy nodded, noticing the sincerity in the young man's voice. Charles, we have problems, Richard said. Miranda came with a lawyer. They're filing a lawsuit to contest the will, claiming Arthur Brown wasn't in full possession of his faculties when he drafted it due to medication. Charles frowned. That's a serious accusation, but they have little chance. I was present when the will was made as a witness, and Arthur Brown was completely of sound mind. Besides, there's a medical report from his treating doctor that confirms it. We can request a copy. You were present when the will was made? Tracy asked, surprised. Yes, Charles nodded. Your father asked me to be there. He wanted everything to be legally impeccable. I reviewed every point. Oh, you came just in time, Tracy exclaimed. I was starting to lose hope. No need to panic, Charles smiled. We're going to handle this situation. Miranda wants to intimidate you, but the law is on your side. What should we do now? Tracy asked. First, don't fall for provocations, Charles replied. Second, gather all the documents that prove your father was in full possession of his faculties when he made the will. I'll take care of that. And third, continue with the normal operations of the company. No freezing assets or stopping activities. They have no legal basis for that. Thank you, Tracy said sincerely. I don't know how to thank you. No need to thank me, Charles smiled. I respected your father, and I'll do everything to protect his last will. Besides, it's my job. In the following weeks, Tracy frequently visited the company office, gradually familiarizing herself with the business. Charles prepared the defense for the trial, gathering evidence to support the legality of the will. He often consulted Tracy on legal matters, and little by little, a warm and trusting relationship developed between them. Meanwhile, Miranda did not cease in her attempt to take control of the company. She spread rumors about Tracy's incompetence. She tried to turn the employees against the new owner. She even visited the projects and threatened contractors with breaking contracts if they continued to work. It wasn't easy for Tracy. She never imagined being in this situation, running a construction company and facing a malicious stepmother. But the support of Richard, Charles, and other employees gave her strength. The day of the trial was approaching. Tracy was nervous despite Charles's assurances that everything would be fine. What if Miranda really has some documents we don't know about? She asked the night before the hearing when she and Charles stayed late at the office preparing for the hearing. Even if she does, we're prepared, the lawyer replied, rubbing his tired eyes. We have enough evidence that your father was in full possession of his mental faculties and had a firm memory when he made the will. In addition, the notary confirmed the legality of the procedure, and that means a lot to the court. Tracy nodded, but the anxiety did not leave her. She felt Miranda had something up her sleeve. Charles, can I ask you something? Why are you trying so hard to help me? I understand you respected my father, but still... The young man was silent as if gathering his thoughts. Your father helped me a lot once, he finally said. 3 years ago, I went through a complicated situation. My previous employer was dishonest, and I was unwittingly involved in his frauds. Arthur Brown believed in my innocence when others turned their backs on me. He gave me a job and helped me regain my reputation. I'll never forget it. Dad knew how to see the good in people, Tracy said softly. He always gave a chance to those who needed it. Exactly, Charles nodded, and I want to return the favour by helping you. It's the least I can do. Their gazes met, and Tracy felt her heart beat faster. In Charles's eyes, there was so much warmth and sincerity. At that moment, she understood that her feelings for the lawyer were no longer just gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. The courtroom was packed to the brim. Tracy nervously squeezed Charles's hand, who was sitting next to her at the defense table. Across from them were Miranda and her lawyer, Oscar Wright, confident with cold smiles on their faces. Don't worry, Charles whispered, noticing Tracy's anxiety. The judge, a middle-aged woman, stout and with an attentive gaze, reviewed the documents. Finally, she lifted her head and announced the beginning of the session. The hearing lasted several hours. Miranda's lawyer presented medical documents that supposedly showed Arthur Brown was taking strong painkillers at the time of drafting the will. He called a nurse to testify, who confirmed that the patient was often in a state of confusion. Tracy felt a coldness invade her body. What if it was true? What if her father really wasn't in his right mind? But when Charles took the floor, the situation changed. He presented the report of Arthur's treating physician, who confirmed that at the time of drafting the will, the patient was completely lucid and only taking mild painkillers. He also called the notary who certified the will, who under oath stated that he carefully checked the client's state and noticed no signs of incapacity. In addition, Charles continued, we have a video recording of the will drafting and signing process that Arthur Brown prudently requested to be made for these types of situations. An absolute silence fell in the courtroom. A recording? The judge asked. Why wasn't it presented before? We held it back as a final argument, Charles replied. Arthur Brown foresaw possible attempts to contest his last will and prepared accordingly. The judge ordered the recording to be played. On the screen appeared Arthur Brown, pale but with a clear gaze and a firm voice, explaining his decisions in detail, emphasizing that he was fully conscious and acting of his own free will. The camera captured the notary, the witnesses, and the moment of the document's signing. I want my daughter Tracy to be protected, Arthur Brown said from the screen. I know that without me it will be difficult for her, which is why I'm leaving her a home and a stable source of income. As for my wife Miranda, she also receives a significant portion of the assets, including our apartment and a share in the business. I believe this distribution is fair. When the recording ended, the room was silent. Tracy wiped a tear, listening to her father's voice, so calm and secure even in the face of death. The court will now deliberate, the judge announced, after a brief consultation with her assistants. What do you think our chances are? Tracy whispered to Charles. Almost 100%, he replied confidently. The video made everything clear. And indeed, half an hour later, the judge issued her ruling. The lawsuit filed by Miranda Brown to contest the will is dismissed in its entirety for lack of merit. The will is declared valid. The rights of the heirs are confirmed in accordance with the will of the testator. Miranda jumped up from her seat. This is unfair, she exclaimed. I was by his side until the last day. I deserve more. Leave the courtroom if you cannot control your emotions, the judge replied coldly. The decision has been made and can be appealed according to the law. Miranda shot Tracy a furious look and left, slamming the door. Her lawyer quickly followed her, muttering apologies. Congratulations, Charles said when they left the courtroom. Now your rights are fully protected and no one can contest them. Thank you, Tracy replied sincerely. I couldn't have done it without you. Don't downplay your role, Charles smiled. You showed real strength and character. Your father would be proud of you. That same day, Tracy moved definitively into the apartment her father left her. Nancy Cooper helped with the last details and with getting settled. It's so spacious here, the teacher admired as she walked through the bright rooms. Your father chose a wonderful place. It's only a 15-minute walk from the university. Yes, Tracy nodded, contemplating the view from the window. Dad always remembered how much I liked to walk, and there's a park nearby. We used to walk there a lot when I was a child. Now you're starting a new life, Nancy Cooper said, hugging her former student affectionately. And from the way you talk about that young lawyer, it's not just professional. Tracy blushed. Nancy Cooper, we're just colleagues. Of course, the teacher nodded with a slight smile. At my age, you can see these things at a glance. He's a good person, that's the main thing. The next day, Tracy arrived for the first time at the company office as the legitimate owner of the majority stake. The employees received her with applause. Congratulations on the win in court, the secretary said, handing Tracy a bouquet of flowers. We were all worried about you. Thank you, Tracy said, touched. But this is our common victory. I know many of you gave testimony and supported me. Richard held the first official meeting with Tracy's participation, where he introduced her to the team as the new director. Many employees expressed their joy that the company remained in the founder's family. "We won't fail you, Tracy," said the old foreman, who had worked since the company's founding. "Your father didn't just create a business, but a real family. Here, we all support each other." These words deeply moved Tracy. She understood the respect her father had and the responsibility she now had to the people who believed in him. In the following days, Tracy immersed herself completely in the work. She studied the documentation, visited the construction sites, and met with contractors and clients. Richard and other experienced employees patiently explained the details of the business to her, and Charles helped her with the legal aspects. Gradually, Tracy began to feel capable. Her university education in economics was very useful, and her natural attention to detail and ability to listen helped her quickly absorb the new information. But not everything was going well. Miranda, although she lost the lawsuit, had no intention of giving up. As the owner of 49% of the shares, she had certain rights in the company and used them to create problems. She blocked some decisions that required the unanimous approval of the shareholders, spread rumors among clients about alleged mismanagement, and even tried to poach key employees. "I don't know how much longer I can take it," Tracy confessed once when she and Charles stayed late at the office reviewing another complaint from Miranda. "It seems like she's doing everything to exhaust me." "That's right," Charles nodded. "She hopes you'll get tired and agree to sell her your share for a pittance. Don't fall for that manipulation." "Easy for you to say," Tracy sighed. "Sometimes I feel it would be simpler to sell everything and start over. Maybe it would be for the best. After all, I'm not a builder." "And was your father a builder?" Charles asked. "He was an economist by training like you, but he believed in his idea of building affordable, quality homes for ordinary people and created a company that everyone is proud of. You can continue his legacy, Tracy. You have everything you need for it." Their gazes met, and Tracy felt a warmth in her chest. Charles believed in her even more than she did in herself. "Thank you," she said in a low voice. "You always know how to provide support." "That's what friends are for," Charles replied with a slight hesitation. "Friends?" Tracy lowered her gaze. "Of course, what else could they be? She, a young businesswoman with a lot of problems. He, an experienced lawyer who helps her out of friendship and respect for her father." But deep down, Tracy knew that her feelings for Charles went beyond friendship. His smile made her heart race. His presence gave her security. His advice was always on point. By his side, she felt protected and understood. Weeks passed. Tracy felt more and more confident in her role as director. She proposed several ideas to optimize the company's work that were unanimously approved by the employees. Her idea to hold a charity campaign, the free renovation of an orphanage, generated real enthusiasm in the team and improved the company's image in the city. Miranda continued with her intrigues, but they no longer affected Tracy as much. She learned to face her stepmother's manipulations, firmly defending her position. One evening, when they were returning from an important meeting with investors, Charles unexpectedly proposed, "Do you want to go to dinner somewhere? It's been a tough day, and I know an excellent place nearby." Tracy looked at him in surprise. In all the months they had known each other, Charles had never made a proposal like this. "I'd love to," she replied, feeling her cheeks flush slightly. The restaurant turned out to be small and cozy, with dim lighting and live music. Charles was clearly not a new customer. The waiters greeted him like a regular. "I sometimes come here for dinner after work," he explained, seeing Tracy's surprised expression. "The food is excellent, and it's almost never noisy." During dinner, for the first time, they talked about something other than work. Charles told her about his childhood in a small provincial town, his parents who were teachers, and how he dreamed of being a lawyer since he participated in a legal competition in high school. Tracy shared memories of her mother, who died when she was only 8, and how her father raised her alone, trying to be both a dad and a mum. You know, she said when the dessert was brought out, I was never interested in my father's business before. I thought it wasn't for me and I would do something completely different. But now I understand how much I missed. We could have spent more time together and I would have shared his interests. Don't blame yourself, Charles said softly. You were young, you had your own life, and your father understood that. He never pressured you, did he? No, never, Tracy smiled. He supported all my interests. When I wanted to be a dancer, he took me to dance classes. When I was passionate about being an artist, he bought expensive paints and canvases. When I decided to study economics, he didn't object, although I think deep down he hoped I would get involved in his business. And here you are, continuing his legacy, Charles smiled. He would be proud of you, Tracy. She looked at Charles and suddenly understood that for the first time in a long time, she felt truly happy. Despite all the difficulties, despite the loss of her father and the machinations of her stepmother, someone had appeared in her life with whom she wanted to be herself. Charles decided to speak. Can I ask you a personal question? Of course, he nodded. Why aren't you married? Oh, you have how many? He smiled. I'm not married because I haven't found the person I want to spend my whole life with. He was silent for a moment. I thought I hadn't found anyone, but now I'm not so sure. Their gazes met, and Tracy felt her heart skip a beat. Is he talking about me? She thought. Charles took her hand in his. I've wanted to tell you this for a while. I like you very much, and not just as a client or a colleague. I understand that now may not be the best time for these confessions, given all the circumstances in your life. It's the best time, Tracy interrupted him, squeezing his hand in response. I like you very much too, Charles, and I don't know what I would have done these last few months without your support. He smiled, and his eyes shone with such warmth that Tracy felt her breath catch. So, should we stop being so formal with each other? He proposed. I'd love to, Tracy laughed. After dinner, Charles walked her home. At the entrance, he stopped, undecided. Can I invite you on a real date, for example, this weekend? Yes, you can, Tracy nodded, feeling her cheeks blush again. I would be very happy. Charles leaned in and kissed her carefully. It was a tender, almost ethereal kiss that made Tracy's head spin. See you tomorrow, he whispered as he pulled away. Sweet dreams. See you tomorrow, she echoed, watching him walk away toward his car. Going up in the elevator, Tracy couldn't contain her smile. A new chapter was beginning in her life, and for the first time in a long time, the future did not seem like a heavy burden of responsibilities, but a promise full of new opportunities and hopes. Spring brought not only the awakening of nature, but also a new stage in Tracy's life. Brown renovations prospered under her leadership. 3 new residential complexes were delivered on time, and clients left enthusiastic comments about the quality of the construction and the honesty in the work. All the employees gathered in the conference room. A small ceremony preceded an important meeting. Dear colleagues, Tracy began, looking at those present. Today marks 6 months since I took over the company. I want to thank each of you for your support, patience, and trust. I couldn't have done it without you. It is we who should thank you, Richard replied, standing up. You have preserved the spirit of the company that your father created and have brought new ideas that have propelled us forward. Applause rang out. Tracy smiled, moved, seeing Charles in the farthest corner of the room, looking at her with evident pride. In these 6 months, their relationship had grown into a solid union based on mutual respect and love. I have an important announcement, Tracy continued when the applause subsided. Today, we are officially launching the Arthur Brown Charitable Foundation. The foundation will help orphaned children and families in difficult situations with housing and education. The initiative was completely supported by the team. Many employees offered to collaborate in the foundation's work, contributing their professional help and personal time. After the meeting, Tracy went into her office, which had been her father's. On the desk was his photograph in a simple frame. She often talked to it, telling him about the work and asking for advice in difficult situations. "You would be proud, Dad," she said in a low voice, looking at the familiar face. "We're doing everything just like you wanted." Someone knocked softly on the door. "May I?" Charles peeked his head into the office. "How do you feel after the presentation?" "I was a little nervous, but now I feel calmer," Tracy smiled. "So much has happened in these 6 months, and there's still a lot ahead." Charles walked up to her and took her hands. "By the way, I talked to our lawyers about Miranda. She agreed to sell her share of the stock." "Really?" Tracy couldn't believe it. "Why all of a sudden?" "She received an attractive offer from abroad," Charles explained. "A fashion firm invited her to be their lead designer. I think she understood that she wouldn't achieve anything here and decided to start over." Tracy felt a sudden relief. The confrontation with her stepmother had consumed a lot of her strength and energy. Now that chapter of her life could be closed. "I don't hold a grudge," Tracy admitted. "These months have taught me a lot, and in a way, I'm even grateful to her. If it weren't for her cruelty, maybe I never would have discovered what I'm capable of or met you." Charles hugged her tenderly. "And I have a surprise for you," he said, taking a small velvet box out of his pocket. "I wanted to do this in a more romantic setting, but for some reason, right now just feels like the right time." He knelt and opened the box, where an elegant ring with a small but perfectly clean diamond sparkled. "Tracy Brown, will you marry me?" She caught her breath. Looking into those kind eyes, she didn't hesitate for a second. "Yes," she simply replied. "Of course, yes." Charles put the ring on her finger and got up to hug her. At that moment, a ray of sunshine broke through the clouds and illuminated Arthur's photograph on the desk. To Tracy, it seemed her father was smiling, as if giving them his blessing. A month later, Tracy and Charles laid the first stone of the new project together, a residential complex for young families under a special benefits program. Part of the apartments were intended for young people who had aged out of foster care and were starting their independent lives. "You know," Tracy said, "when we were on the way home after the ceremony, I never thought I would get into construction, but now I understand. Creating homes for people isn't just a business, it's a mission. We're not just giving them a roof, we're giving them a place where they'll be happy." "Your father always understood that," Charles nodded, "and you are his worthy successor." At home, Tracy was in for another discovery. While looking through an old box of her father's documents, she found a yellowed photograph where a very young Arthur Brown was standing next to an older man in front of a house under construction. On the back, it said, "My first house with Grandpa." "He taught me the most important thing. You have to build in a way that you're not ashamed to look those who will live there in the eyes." Tracy gently ran her fingers over the photograph. Now she understood where her father's passion for construction came from. It was a family tradition passed down from generation to generation, and now she herself was a part of it. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, "for all your lessons, for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Life went on, the company expanded, and the fund to help orphans was working at full capacity. The wedding with Charles was scheduled for the fall. Tracy often thought about how destiny intertwines in curious ways. Sometimes the hardest trials lead to the brightest changes. And although she still missed her father, the pain of loss was slowly turning into a warm and grateful memory. His legacy lived on in every house built, in every happy family that received the keys to a new home, in every child who found hope thanks to the fund that bore his name. And most importantly, it lived in Tracy's heart, who now knew for certain that no matter what, she would never be alone again. The love of her father, the support of Charles, and her own inner strength would help her overcome any obstacle in her path.